everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor of catching up with an educator, bassist, someone who I recently heard live on stage with the Huntertones, DeAscentis. Yay!
All right, thank you, Raul. So great to see you.
My pleasure, Adam, my pleasure. So, as I had just mentioned, we had the great opportunity and privilege to hear the Huntertones live here in Las Vegas. And it's an amazing group, 6-piece. We'll talk about that in depth. But as always, we'd like to go to the past. How did you get started in music and particularly on bass?
Of course, let's start at the beginning. I, like many, started playing music at a very early age. I was probably in third grade, I think, second grade, when I started on piano lessons at the encouragement of my parents. I come out of a kind of musical family. No other professional musicians, but all of my relatives played an instrument at one time or another. Both of my parents were violists in their middle school and high school orchestras. My brother was a viola player. My sister was a cello player. So there was a lot of encouragement to be involved with music. Started taking piano lessons. I was playing handbells in my church bell choir. All of these things started happening. And then in fifth grade, I was very lucky to be part of a school district that had a very strong music program. It's the Boardman school system in Northeast Ohio, where I grew up. So in fifth grade, they require all of the students to choose an instrument to play in orchestra or band, or start singing in the choir. And at that age, I had been exposed to a lot of classic rock and, music like that through my parents and just through my environment. And I really wanted to be a guitar player, man. But as many kids do, how it goes. But, from school, they sent home this pamphlet, and it had all of the options of instruments that you could play in the orchestra or the band or the choir. Guitar was not one of them. So I saw, okay, there's upright bass. If you play upright bass, I heard that you can also play electric bass, and that's kind of like guitar.
Yeah.
So I'll take that. That's kind of, that was my fifth grade logic of why I should play the bass. And lucky enough for me, that was a decision that led me down the path of learning about the bass as an instrument of its own. Obviously, upright bass, electric bass, two fantastic, unique, incredible instruments that I've had my life's pleasure learning how to play and perform for people. But it is funny that it kind of started out of that motivation of like, I want to be the guitar player.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think a lot of guitarists would like to believe that bassists are failed or frustrated guitarists, but when you get into the real nuts and bolts of bass, that's not the case at all.
That's true. And, I think there is some logic that I've tried to take forward into my career as a musician. When I'm playing my bass in certain musical contexts, I try to act as an extension of the guitar. In certain styles of music, I kind of view the bass as an extension of the electric guitar, and that helps me make decisions about what I'm playing. Other times I'm thinking about the drums. I'm thinking about myself as an extension of the drums. So, yeah, the relativity is kind of interesting.
There you go. Well, and after your elementary leap into the world of bass, you did pursue formal training, did you not?
I did. Yeah, after I went through middle school and high school, I was, through those years, I was playing in orchestra, and I started playing in jazz band. I even started playing in some dance bands around that time. After my high school graduation, I did continue on to the Ohio State University, where I went to music school there. And that is where I met my bandmates, or met my classmates, who would go on to, together we would form what came to be Huntertones. So at Ohio State, I was studying, at first I went as a classical studies major, started with that for less than a year, bounced around, and I went into music ed, I think, for a short period of time, and eventually landed in their jazz studies program as an upright bassist. So one of the attractive things to me when I was choosing my school to go study music formally, one of the attractive things about OSU for me was that there was this real openness that they had in their approach to a student's curriculum. I auditioned at a couple different schools, which shall not be named, but I will say that at different schools, they were much more strict about your curriculum and your path through their school. And if you came in as a classical bassist, you were only going to be focusing on classical music. Mm-hmm. And, that's not a bad thing. The people that come out of those programs are incredible, fantastic classical bassists. And that's what's required to achieve that level. At Ohio State, they were very encouraging to make your own path. I was able to study with Andy Woodson, a fantastic bass teacher that I spent 4 years with, who was the jazz bass instructor. I studied 4 years simultaneously with Dr. Paul Robinson, who was the classical bass teacher. And they were very accepting of this crossover where I was able to play still in the symphony, I was able to play in the jazz ensemble, and I was able to find my own identity as a bassist while I was going through that program.
Well, and one of the things that's often happens in the educational settings is the networking. And as you mentioned, you met your fellow bandmates. To just kind of rattle off here, I've jotted down the names. We've got Dan White on sax.
Yes.
Don Lampley on trumpet and sousaphone, which you don't see a sousaphone on stage often.
Right.
Chris Ott on trombone and beatboxing. We've got, of course, you on bass, John Hubble on drums, and Josh Hill on guitar.
Yes. That is the core of Huntertones, us six.
Nice. And the kind of music that you guys play, it's kind of genre defying from the point of view that a lot of times, as you mentioned, you've got these lanes of jazz or classical, and it's not classical. I'll say at least we could kind of push it this way towards the spectrum, but it's a high energy with a 3-horn section, and then you guys with the drums and bass, percussion side, guitar doing guitar thing. There's a blend of so much high energy, funk, jazz, you name it, it's all there. How did that concept come to be? This direction that you guys are going in?
We've been playing together now for like close to 15 years, I think. We started in college. Dan White, our saxophone player, was really the one who started the whole thing by bringing us together to play some gigs at a coffee shop on campus. And at that time, the group was called Dan White Sextet. It was very jazz focused, very very modern and traditional jazz focused. As we progressed as a group, we started to incorporate more and more influences out of our own backgrounds, because we found that we could do that. We could incorporate other things and it would excite our audiences. Mm-hmm. Some of our earliest shows in those days when we were still students, when we were underage and couldn't get a gig at a bar, we would have house shows. And a little fun fact, the apartment where most of us lived at one time or another in Columbus was on Hunter Avenue. And that's how the name Huntertones eventually came to be.
Oh, cool.
As a little homage to that that place. And most of our early shows were in the basement of this house, where we would have all of our classmates come over, all of our friends and their friends, and we would pack this little basement with 6-foot ceilings, and we would play house shows in there. And starting then, I think, is when we really started to notice, like, oh, we could do this cool and interesting thing. If we incorporate this funk section, people really turn on when they hear that. Mm-hmm. If we incorporate this old school R&B type of thing, people really love to hear that. And it was around that time that Chris started beatboxing a lot and incorporating that as part of the show, and the sousaphone came into the mix, and all of a sudden we started to see our show take the form of this like high energy, constantly evolving, constantly changing, high entertainment, high energy show. Mm-hmm. That really excited us when we saw people getting excited by that. So fast forward 10 plus years later, and we have continued to refine it more and more, and I think that we've landed on something really special and unique to us as a group of musicians.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's super tight, the music, and I know a lot of times, like with food, people try to compare to something that is familiar. So you're like, oh, it tastes like chicken.
Sure.
Well, one of my first, I think in the first few seconds that I was listening, I'm going, oh my gosh, these guys are like early Chicago. This is tight horn section, boom, slam, and I'm like, whoa. Granted, watching the rest of the show, it went in its own totally own direction, but so much sound coming out of only three horns. And now there's a kind of I don't know if how much effect it has, but there are pedals on the floor which may expand the sonic footprint. So I was kind of curious about that too.
Yeah, we have incorporated a lot of effects through the years. Josh, our guitarist, and I have always had a couple of effects in front of us. We're never too maximalist about it. We just have a select few. But then I think after a little while, Dan and John and Chris, they all started getting curious, and they're like, all right, how do I incorporate some stuff like that into the brass and woodwinds world? Mm-hmm. And they've gotten very good at doing so. And I think it's a cool aspect of the show now, where we have moments where we indulge those effects, and we create kind of like we can go into the jam world a little bit and have some abstractness.
Nice.
And then as soon as you get used to that, we pull it back in, and we lock it down, we get tight again. And the effects have been a fun part of the show. And production wise, touring around, and we don't always have the luxury of taking our own sound engineer with us. So when we're working with a house engineer, we always have to be kind of clear from the very beginning, like just get the levels kind of dialed in, make it sound good and natural and clean. We'll take it from there, because Dan loves to put delay on his own saxophone, and as soon as the house engineer starts putting delay and reverb and all getting fancy with it, then it kind of like trips us up, because we try to bring everything to the table from the stage.
Gotcha. Well, and with the uniqueness of, you've got your sound, also with the tunes, I didn't, nothing recognizable from the point of view is that you're not taking other things, you're writing a lot of original music. How does that process happen with all of you?
Yeah, it's a lot of original music at this point. We have done many arrangements through the years, and that still is something that we'll incorporate. Part of our current show, we love to tribute the meters. We still have one or two meters arrangements that we love to incorporate. But the original music at this stage comes primarily from Dan, Chris, and John. Our three horn players are the main composers for the group. And at this stage, they will come in with something that's maybe 50% complete. Maybe it'll be on sheet music. Maybe it'll be a demo that everyone has had the chance to listen to and learn. But we'll come into a rehearsal or a sound check if we have some spare time to kill, and we'll start playing that, and we'll start tossing ideas around, and kind of before we know it, something more has come to be. And then the next stage, maybe that original composer of whatever idea we're working on, we'll take that back and refine the arrangement, and we'll do another round of the same type of thing. Early on, it was much more, all the musical ideas were much more complete when they came to the table. But now, as we've grown together, we have found a nice way to all be collaborating on things as they develop. And, naturally, as any musician, as any touring musician will tell you, the more times you play a song on stage in different rooms and in front of different audiences, you will find new ways of playing an arrangement that you might like better, or it might improve it, or you might find yourself fixing problems in an arrangement that you didn't even know were there after you end up playing it so many times. So that is one aspect that I really enjoy also, just finding your minimum viable arrangement of a new tune or idea and just starting to play it as much as you can all over the place, and then you'll figure out the best way to do it, and it'll come together in a very beautiful way.
Nice. Well, and we should talk a little bit about Motionation.
Yes. Yeah, Motionation is our most recent album that came out last year. We are very proud of this album, and it was recorded in Brooklyn. And we're really proud of it. It has some special guests, and it's a really great representation of where we are right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's always interesting because with live performances and recorded performances, and even when they record from live, the energy levels are so different because, again, you feed off of the crowd, and it's just super exciting. Now, it's probably a good time to talk a little bit about how you're getting your sound and your gear. What are you playing on?
Of course. I have a 5-string Sadowski jazz bass that has been my main workhorse bass now for 7 or 8 years, I think. It is the Metro line. It's nothing fancy. I mean, Sadowski basses in general are fancy, but it's a Metro line, and it's a funny story of how I found this bass. I previously was playing on a 5-string Fender jazz bass, and I was starting to grow tired of it in one way or another. I was searching for a new thing, and for years, like probably 2 years, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I was looking for. One day, I was walking into Sam Ash in Midtown in Manhattan. I was just there to buy new strings. Like, I literally was going to walk in, get new strings, walk out. I think I was on my way to a rehearsal or a gig or something. And I walk in, and I saw this bass hanging on the wall. And, I didn't even think that Sadowskis were in Sam Ash.
Yeah.
So I walked in, I saw it. I was like, oh, wow, that's a really pretty bass. And I was like, I got a couple extra minutes. Let me sit down and play this bass. And I played 5 notes, and I was like, all right, that's what I was looking for. So this bass, it's on the wall behind me here. It just it does what I want it to do, and that's all you can ask for in an instrument. It plays the way I want it to play. It makes the sounds I want it to make. It's extremely flexible. I don't have a bunch of basses that I take around. I am usually playing this one, and I have a lot of influence from different styles of instruments, P basses, jazz basses, Stingray, like you name it, Rickenbacker, every kind of bass I appreciate individually, and I love the sound of each of these iconic instruments. And I feel like this instrument behind me is it makes me able to kind of represent each of those feelings through this one instrument, which I just love about it. So I have Ernie Ball, the Power Slinky strings on there. I've been using those recently, a little bit heavier gauge, which I like because I can dig into them a little bit more, and they don't start to fart out or anything. I coming from a background on upright bass, and I have been playing more upright bass lately again. It changes your hands and your muscles start to get a little bit bigger. So I like having a little bit more resistance on my strings. From there, lately, I have been playing a lot with the Jodfrier Capo preamp pedal on my pedal board. I have really been enjoying that preamp, and I use it 90% of the time these days. And then I have a couple of effects that I usually have with me on any given gig. I usually have the MXR bass envelope. Take that with me. I have a Boss OC3 that I've been playing for many years, an octave pedal. And I also have a couple of the three-leaf audio Doom pedals that I like using for overdrive. Overdrive, I think, is one thing that I've gotten addicted to it, I think, over the years. There's so many different types of overdrives, and I was searching for many years for ones that really clicked with the way I wanted to hear it. the job for your preamp has a lot of those sounds in there, which I really love. And those 3-leaf audio Doom pedals, I have the first one and the second one. They have some really unique and cool overdrives that can work in complement with the others. So yeah, that's kind of like the gist of the gear that I typically use. In terms of amps, I'm not super married to any particular amps at this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, living in New York, I feel like most of the time I'm using backline anywhere I play.
Yeah.
So my days of hauling my own bass amp around with me to different gigs are on hiatus, I guess, at very least. But that said, I do have a little Mark Bass 112, the combo, the little combo amp from Mark Bass, and that is really nice for me. I love the tone circuitry on there. Makes it sound like a much bigger amp than it is, and it pushes a lot of air, and I really enjoy that. I do typically tend to gravitate towards 12-inch speakers, I think, in general. I like having a little more oomph to things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with gear.
Nice. Well, and especially when I talk to the musicians from New York, it's the consideration, weight becomes a real issue, and mobility, because who wants to schlep, like a
right.
2 410 cabs up and down.
Exactly. Tale as old as time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting to the age now where I'm like, all right, I'm not Superman. I got to be careful going up and down stairs, hauling things, and one wrong move and you hurt yourself, and that's not good. So yeah, I try to be cognizant of the weight I'm carrying around, and one little funny gear change that I made a couple years ago is, when I was on tour walking through airports, I noticed that I was always wearing my backpack on my back, and then I had my bass on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my shoulders had all this weight pulling off of it. And I never thought that much of it, but then eventually I noticed my back started getting a little
tweaky,
getting a little wonky. So I was like, all right, I got to switch this up. And at that time I made the switch from my backpack, for my personal items, I switched from a backpack to a messenger bag, so I put my bass on my back, started carrying that on the side, and that was much more balanced and healthy, I think.
Nice.
But yeah, you got to pay attention to those things.
Indeed. And as the years go by, when we talk to some of the people that have been at it for a long, long time, they will mention, wait.
Yes.
It's a critical thing.
Yes. And, just being warmed up before you play, and little things like that too. I always try to reinforce those habits when I'm teaching it. Anytime I'm teaching a lesson, I always try to take time to warm up with the student so that they really grasp the importance of taking care of your fingers and your joints and your wrists, because they're fragile. And if you have an injury and you don't have the time to rest and recover, then you find yourself in a real hard spot.
In a chronic situation.
In a chronic situation, yes.
There we go. Well, and we shouldn't leave without talking a little bit about your role as an educator. I was seeing on your website. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, I really enjoy teaching. And at this stage of my career, I'm trying to get back into teaching. When I was college age, maybe even a little bit younger, I was teaching a ton. I think I had 16 students that were taking weekly lessons at a time.
Wow.
And things got so busy for a while that I had to put that on hold. And now I'm starting to take on some more students. I'm doing mostly like one-off lessons here and there with different people across the country, doing virtual lessons. And it's been very fulfilling to be able to pass on some knowledge again. So we've also had a lot of experience doing group format teaching. With Huntertones, when we're on the road, we're always trying to look for opportunities to do workshops and clinics at schools, whether those are colleges or high schools or what have you. So working in a group format is also very enriching. And I love seeing students who are excited about improving themselves and interested in the craft. And it makes me think of myself when I was at that age. And, it's just a lot of fun to share some of my experience with people like that.
Nice. Well, and a lot of times with students, it helps re-energize your passion for things because they're so passionate and, because they're just starting. They haven't been beaten down by the years of experience.
Right. Yeah. It's like, also it's the same kind of feeling, I think, when you sit down at an instrument that's not your primary instrument. You see it all the time with drums.
Yeah.
Like if people who aren't drummers and they sit down behind the drum kit, they just get the biggest smile on their face, much to the dismay of the owner of that drum kit, whoever it may be. But, it makes you feel like a kid again. That excitement of every note that comes out of the instrument that you're holding, every note is so exciting and fun. And to work with students reminds you of that feeling. To play another instrument reminds you of that feeling. And whichever way you find that feeling, that's something that you got to hold on to forever with your own instrument. I strive to have that feeling every time I pick up my bass and practice my scales. I try to be excited to hear the sound coming out of my instrument because, what a treat it is to play this instrument and to have a life as a bass player.
Nice. Well, and we should talk a little bit about what's in the works and plans, what's in the future.
Yeah. So looking ahead this year, we have some Huntertones action coming up. In a couple months, we'll be doing some shows on the East Coast. We're going to be playing at a fantastic club in Portsmouth, New Hampshire called Jimmy's Jazz Club, which is a fantastic new club. We've been there a couple times. And then another very exciting thing that's coming up for us is we will be doing another tour with the U.S. State Department as cultural ambassadors for the United States. We will be going to West Africa in April, I believe it is, for the better part of a week. And we'll be doing some performances and workshops and clinics there. So that is something that is very, very exciting at this time.
Nice. And if people want to stay on top of where you're going to be, because I know this is kind of the beginning of the year, but more to follow, where's the best place for them to look?
Oh, anywhere you can find my name. Instagram, I'm Adam D Music C. That's my handle there. My website is adamplaysbass.com.
Mm-hmm.
Got some stuff on YouTube. Find me there. Go to my website and there's all the links there. And, there's a contact form too. So send me a message and we'll connect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and for Huntertones, huntertones.com, you can find, information there as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's huntertones.com. On Instagram, it's Huntertones Band. And Huntertones is all one word. Yeah, and if you connect with those, you'll see what's coming up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and one last thing I'll also mention is that I was just bopping around YouTube and checking out another group that I really like, Lake Street Dive.
Yes.
And I look up and I hear horns, which they usually don't have. And I go, hey, I know those guys.
Yeah, that's a nice surprise, huh? Over the past couple years, our collaborations with that camp have increased a lot. Aki Burmese, a member of Lake Street Dive, has been on our radar for a long time as a singular artist in the New York music scene.
Mm-hmm.
Right when all of us in the Huntertones kind of made our move to New York, generally at the same time, about 10 years ago. And there is a fantastic club that sadly just closed its doors called Rockwood Music Hall. And we used to go and hear Aki playing at Rockwood. He would be playing piano and singing his songs. And he is just one of those fountains of musicality that you can't stop listening to. So Aki has been on our radar for a long time. He became a member of Lake Street Dive, and we very fortunately have been able to collaborate with him as a guest artist with Huntertones over the years. He's come on tours with us, which is an unforgettable experience.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, Dan, Chris, and John have been hopping on board with Lake Street Dive as their horn section, which is fantastic. They've been doing a lot of touring with them over the past 2 years now, I guess. And yeah, they are great. We've also had the opportunity to open a concert or two of theirs. We actually did New Year's Eve in Boston with them a couple years ago, which was very fun. It was a pajama party themed concert, which was which was a blast. Yeah, all fantastic people, and it's been a great pleasure getting to know all of them.
Very fun, very fun. Well, Adam, we appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule, and we're so happy to catch up with you after hearing, again, an amazing show here in Las Vegas. Folks, if you see the Huntertones coming to a venue near you, make sure you go check them out, because it's just, you're going to leave with a smile on your face and your toes tapping, and if you play an instrument like bass, you're going to want to go home and woodshed, because you're going, I need to work on this stuff. So you've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Adam DeAscentis.
Thank you so much, Raul. You are so kind. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure.
Yeah.